We are joined by Nebraska men's tennis coach, Mr. Peter Kobelt. Peter Kobelt. How you doing, my friend?
Doing great, Adam. Thanks. I think I'm going to sign up for the football camp. Am I allowed in?
Well, if you can prove that you're in middle or elementary school, you are allowed in.
I got a baby face.
I love it. All right, now you were a former pro tennis player. All right, led Nebraska to 17 wins in your first season, the most since 1994. The Big Red. And we were chatting during the break. Actually, a lot of the things I'm going to ask you about all over again, but you guys beat Purdue 4-1 on Friday, beat the Hoosiers, Indiana 4-0 this weekend. Now, you're currently ranked 39th in the country. All right, but talk to me about your season so far, in particular this past weekend. You guys are having a lot of success.
Yeah, I think we're an older group. We have five seniors and 3 juniors, so we're on the older side. They've played a lot of tennis. They understand college tennis. They all love and care about Nebraska. They're a very close team, and I think we've just continued to grow over the course of the season. I think as a coach, you try and teach them all these different skills and things like that, but it's really hard to teach the skill of winning, of learning how to win.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these guys are starting to figure out exactly what that means for them as a group collectively. And I think we're just starting to hit our stride. But yeah, it was a great weekend. Purdue, they're an up and coming team in the Big Ten. That we beat them 4-1 here on Friday, and then Indiana also ranked in the top 75. We beat them 4-0, so it was good to take a doubles point and kind of take care of business and finish the weekend off right.
You talk about learning how to win.
Mm-hmm.
And they're learning how to do and trying to coach learning how to win. There's some other programs that we're trying to figure that out as well. All right. And so as a coach yourself and a guy who played professionally, all right, and you've been here for 3 years, first year as the head coach, talk to me about how you try to coach learning how to win and the process of learning how to win. And I got to imagine in particular close games or close matches.
Yeah, in every sport, it really just comes down to a handful of plays or a possession here or there or a turnover here or there or whatever the sport is. It's a different dynamic, but the same thing in tennis. Tennis is really decided by 6 to 7 to 8 points throughout the match. Whoever wins those points usually wins the match. So it's just as a coach, the way I try and coach it is every day you come to practice and you have to give your mental and physical best effort, regardless of how you're feeling, regardless of what's going on outside of the facility of practice. You have to practice coming to practice with a mindset and an attitude where you're 100% locked in and focused. I can usually tell by the week of practice, kind of how we're going to play, but it's my job ultimately as the coach to hold the standard. And sometimes that means, the guys don't enjoy being around me, or
Mm-hmm.
they go home and they're not happy with how things went at practice. But you have to coach that part so they can eventually become more consistent at practice. And I think what you do in practice, your daily habits are going to transform into what's going to happen in the match eventually. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of that come to life now towards the back half of the season.
It's funny because with my kids, I tell them I'm willing to be the bad guy. I care about you enough to tell you the truth. I care about you enough to tell you what I believe is best. Doesn't mean I'm right. Obviously, I think I am, or I wouldn't say it, but there's a small chance I could be wrong. I'll tell my kids, very small. With the rest of the earth, it's probably much bigger. With my kids, it's very small.
Sure.
I'm willing to be the bad guy because I love you and I care about you enough to do what's best for you, maybe not what you want in the moment. I would imagine it's kind of similar to that when you're coaching players and trying to teach guys how to win. But we got a clip. Houston's going to make the Final Four in college basketball. And I knew you were coming on today. And when I heard this, it's about a minute long from their head coach, Kelvin Sampson. He talks about attitude, effort, body language, consistency, basically things you can control. Yeah. Talent's never mentioned. Go ahead, play that clip, and I want to get your reaction to that. Okay. While Jake grabs that, there's another clip, actually, with Tom Brady. I want to play both these clips. They speak on kind of different things, but they're both how they have found ways to have success. But I want to get your reaction to both these clips. But is that one with Sampson ready? Go ahead and roll that, Jake.
Yeah, here's Kelvin Sampson.
There's only 2 things you can control in this lifetime, and that's your attitude and your effort. And we work so hard on making sure that body language, posture, being a good teammate, understanding your role, being part of something that's far more important than you are, and playing for something far more important than you are, the connectivity that goes that. But that being said, it's not easy. If it was, then everybody would do it. And the problem with consistent people is you take them for granted because you stop respecting what they do. And that's the cynicism in people. They look for what's wrong. You can find something wrong with everybody. You know how? Look for it. But there's something to be said about the consistency we've had here.
So what's your reaction? Because you're obviously building this tennis program up. You guys are doing a great job. You told me you're looking to make the NCAA tournament in tennis for the first time since 2013. And I got some questions about how that works in tennis versus basketball and the like. But when you hear Coach Sampson talk about things like that, what are the thoughts that enter your head?
There's a reason why they're in the Final Four. I think they've been pretty consistent the last couple of years too. I think those are just intangible things that you can instill in your program year after year after year. For me, a testament of a great program is the consistency of a program. It's not a 1 year they do great and then they disappear for a few years. Obviously, the top programs are always there. Guys are always leaving, going, changing. Now the transfer portal's wild. It's even crazier now. But the coaches that instill the message that he's instilling there at Houston and some of these other programs are instilling will always be there. And whatever recruit or whatever player comes walking in the building, they're going to jump on board. And it's you see it all the time. And like you said, it is really hard, but I ultimately think that's what coaching is. Getting the group of guys you have in the locker room to all come together to be a part of something bigger than themselves, representing, here for us, the University of Nebraska, and challenging them each and every day. And ultimately that starts with me as the head coach, and then getting our staff to do the same thing and our support staff to do the same thing, upholding the standards, making sure the program's moving in the right direction. And yeah, there's uncomfortable times and moments, but at the end of the day, the guys want to have fun, and in my opinion, winning is the most fun thing you can do while you're here. So
I would agree with that. I've said on this show, winning almost cures all. There's certain things it doesn't, but
Sure.
For the most part, 99% of the 9% of the time, it's going to be a cure-all for most things. All right, they're trying to make the first NCAA tournament since 2013. You're on pace, frankly, to do it. Now, you were telling me there's 42 automatic bids, but that can change based on the smaller conference champs. But there is 64 teams that get in. Exactly how does the format work for tennis and getting in the tournament?
Yeah, so you got your at-large bids, which can range anywhere kind of between 42 and I think last year it got all the way up to 46, just based on how some of these smaller conferences do. If one of those smaller conferences if one of the champions gets an automatic bid, but yeah, right now we're in a really good position. I don't want to jinx us or anything like that, but the Big Ten took a huge step in the right direction. I think the SEC for a long time was the best conference in college tennis, and I was at University of Kentucky for 2 years before I came here, so I got to kind of see that.
Mhm.
But with the addition of these 4 new teams coming into the conference, I mean, the Big Ten is much deeper and much better than it was even 12 months ago. So if you look at our schedule, we have 2 ranked matches next weekend at Washington, at Oregon, and then we're on the road again the following weekend at Wisconsin, also ranked. And then we host April 18th and April 20th, USC and UCLA, also ranked. So the last 5 matches we have are against ranked programs. So that's just the Big Ten. The Big Ten's, in my opinion, the premier conference, not just athletically, but also academically. I truly think that the combination of the both of them, and just how it's located, how it's spread out across the country, it offers more than every other conference, and it's not taking away from any other conference. I just think the Big Ten's evolved better than some of the other ones, and so is the level and the quality of tennis in the Big Ten too. So
You mentioned to me last year you guys finished 4th in the Big Ten, but finishing 4th in the Big Ten this year looks a little bit different than it did last year with
yes,
the addition of, 4 ranked teams from the West Coast.
right.
And so You talked about how the Big Ten, like the Big Ten's better in football. The Big Ten's better in everything with the addition of these teams. The SEC is also doing some things as well.
Sure.
Much to their credit, they still don't have wrestling. I just want to point that out real quick. I have to take my daily SEC shot, or I have withdrawals, just so you know that, okay?
Sure, no, yeah.
My anti-SEC bias did not do me so great on the NCAA tournament bracket for the men, though. I have Florida going all the way. Florida going all the way.
Wow.
Jake hated how I had Nebraska women's basketball into the Sweet 16. He didn't like how I did that. I had Fairleigh Dickinson upsetting TCU and then Nebraska beating, what was it, Louisville, and then Fairleigh Dickinson. He said I manufactured them into the Sweet 16. False accusations can sometimes be correct, but I digress. You got anything real quick before we head to break, Jake?
Oh yeah, no, it's exciting to see this season play out. I did want to ask you real quick about, because you mentioned your time at Kentucky, Ohio State. Obviously, those are, we're kind of the top level programs there. Which would you say kind of helped you out, because you're a winner at both, and you're talking about trying to bring the winner, the winning culture here to Nebraska. Did you get as much, do you think, out of Ohio State as a player as you did at Kentucky as a coach?
Yeah, I think so. I think at Ohio State, the coach that I played for is still there. They've won the Big Ten 18 years in a row. I was there for 5 of them. So 5 Big Ten rings, 1 national indoor championship ring there. So we got to see the tops of the top as a player. And then going to Kentucky, when I got there, they were about 22, 24 in the country. And the last match I coached was in the NCAA championship match. So 2nd place in all of college tennis. So I got to see it as, I think it was great I got to see it done one way at Ohio State. And then I got to go to another conference in another program, not too far away, but ran differently, and see how they do it as well, just as successfully. But in a different conference, obviously having the opportunity to play in the Big Ten and then coach in the SEC and now coach back in the Big Ten, I think it kind of gives me a better full circle view of like kind of what we need to do here.
NIL and the transfer portal has taken over college athletics. How does that affect tennis?
Same way as it's affecting every sport. It's just not to the same magnitude as what you would see a football player or a basketball player making. But there's programs that have spent close to $1 million already for men's tennis in these 2 years that it's kind of been going on. So we'll see kind of what happens with the settlement here, April 7th. So it's coming up right here in about a week. Obviously, hopefully that sorts some things out. My guess is it probably makes things. There'll be some answers and there'll be some more questions, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But we got Troy kind of leading the tip of the spear there for us. He's an unbelievable leader. He's been doing an amazing job organizing and getting us prepared and ready. I really feel like Nebraska's in a position financially and just as a university. They're in a really good position to adapt and adopt whatever changes that we need to make to position Nebraska sports in the best position they can be in. But there's players playing college tennis right now that are making between 50 and 100 grand a year. So it sounds crazy, but that's just the way it is.
So we were chatting during the break, and you were talking about how you feel like Nebraska is a very unique place. Obviously, you've been to Ohio State, Kentucky, played professionally, but you genuinely feel like Nebraska is a unique place. You're kind of like, man, I'm starting to settle down. I've got a girlfriend. I assume I can say that on air. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know if maybe it's a private,
No.
All right. And you really like it here. And last week I mentioned, all right, I saw that list, top 15 happiest cities in America. And Lincoln was number 6. And we just moved back here last summer. And a bunch of my 8th grade daughter's friends, when they found out we were moving back, was like, oh, cornfield. I'm like, no, there's more to us than that. Okay, we got beans and wheat too, all right? Just saying.
Beef,
there you go. Yes, but I was saying, from my perspective, then let's get yours. We could do a little bit better with some of the roads around here, all right? The bumpiness kind of drives me nuts. I'm just saying, but outside of that, like, because of the outside perception, there aren't a ton of people that move to Nebraska or Lincoln or whatever. But once you're here, there's even less people that move away. Once they actually get to see what it's about, what the people are like, and what the great state of Nebraska is. But what's your whole take on that?
Yeah, I think you just get the whole spectrum of things here. There's great people. It's a great university, obviously. The city of Lincoln's growing, and there's lots of things that you can do here now. Omaha's not too far away too if you're looking for some more stuff, but it's affordable, it's safe, a great university, great academics, great athletics, and then you just there's almost zero traffic ever. Like, I don't know, you move to some place and you sit in your car for an hour trying to get the place to play. There's a lot of things you take for granted that maybe the people here might even take for granted, but there's the quality of life here is really nice. And when I first moved here, I wasn't sure. I had never been in Nebraska before outside of like playing Nebraska when I was at Ohio State. You're here for 18 hours, 24 hours, so you don't get to really experience much. But the longer I'm here, the more I love it, and I can see myself staying here for the rest of my life. Honestly, it's a great place. I think it's only growing and improving. I think the expansion of the Big Ten is helping with that too. But yeah, I think it's an up and coming city and sixth happiest city in the country. I can definitely believe that.
It's interesting when you talk about things you take for granted, because when I lived in the DMV area, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, the DMV area, if something took under 30 minutes to drive to, you were happy. It's one of the worst traffic areas in the country. You think of LA, you think of New York. Most people don't think of the DMV area. It's like right up there as top 3 worst in the country. And man, dude, if something took 25 minutes, I was like, oh, that's quick. Here, I was just during the break, I was complaining about having to go from my house to Kinetic Sports Center for a bunch of kids' club sports. I'm like, oh, that's 25 minutes. That's forever. There, I'd have been thrilled. Like just something like that. It's funny how we take things for granted. But you got anything else you wanted to ask him before we let him get out of here, Jake?
Just with it in this conversation is it's kind of interesting because we talk about fighting outside perception of corn and stuff, but that's we are the Cornhuskers.
We
don't fight it very well.
Not the bug eaters anyway.
That's right. But it's interesting because you do a lot of international recruiting. So when you go on recruiting trips, do they have ideas of corn, or do they think USA, New York City? I mean, what is their perception when they're coming to Nebraska?
So yeah, there's a few recruiting hurdles there for sure. I think we're doing some things though to try and counterbalance those a little bit. We have a professional ATP event on our campus to try and get more coaches and European, some of the European federational coaches to come into town and see Nebraska, to try and bring people here without us having to recruit them here. But yeah, first question is where's Nebraska? And I'm like, well, if you just take your finger and you point to the very center of the United States, you probably put your finger on Nebraska. And the second thing is I heard it's freezing cold all the time, and I'm like, no, it's actually not. It does get a little cold in the winter, but it does in Michigan, it does in Wisconsin, it does it's cold in Kentucky. Well, it was freezing in Kentucky, so I think there's a stereotype where there's not a lot here, and it's freezing cold all the time, and it just takes time to kind of work through those things. But I think just if you can get the recruits here, you show them the new Tom Osborne complex, and you walk them through our tennis facility, and on a day like today, it's 55 degrees, 50 degrees, sun's out, people walking around downtown. Like, come on, how much more can you ask for in a place to come play and study, for your 4 years in college?
When people ask me, hey, are you glad you moved back? Because the family and I moved back last summer. I said, I have one regret. And I'm very serious about this. I have one regret. And that regret is I wish we'd have done it sooner. I was hesitant to uproot 6 kids, et cetera, et cetera. Kid going into high school, middle school, 3 elementary school students. We were hesitant to do it. And that was the only reason it took as long as it did. And now the regret is I wish we'd have done it sooner. So, Coach, good luck the rest of the year. I appreciate you taking the time. When you make the NCAA tournament, maybe we can have you on again. How's that sound?
Let's do it. Thanks for having me. You guys are all lucky to have him on the show, or have him running the show.
Well, he's the guy in charge. I'm the guy flapping my gums.
There we go. Nice.
If he doesn't like what I'm saying, he can just hit a button and nobody hears a thing I'm saying.
That's right. Yeah.